Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the November 9th, 2020 legislative session of the Salisbury City Council. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And first, let's take a moment of silent meditation or prayer. And please remember those who have passed away as a result of the COVID virus. Thank you. At this time, we have a presentation and Deputy City Administrator Andy Kitzrow will make the introductions. Good evening, Andy.
Good evening, President Heath. Yes, we have a couple folks with us so far that are joining us from the Lynching Memorial Task Force. For those who don't know or remember, that Lynching Memorial Task Force was stood up in January 2020. And over this past year, a group of individuals have come together to work on three primary things. One was to identify a location for the lynching memorial, also to decide what type of signage the memorial would include, and then the language that would go on that memorial. But I don't want to steal their thunder, so we do have three people who are here with us. We've got Michaela Moses, James Namakawa, and I think Amber Green just jumped on. So I'll turn it over to whoever would like to talk, start it off, and I think give a presentation. So you should be able to share your screen, but if not, I will see what I can do to make that possible.
All right. Thank you so much. As you said, my name is Michaela Moses. I'm one of the co-chairs of the task force. So I will go ahead and try to share my screen now. Let me know if for whatever reason you can't view the presentation. Okay.
I think we're good to go.
So, as we've stated, I'm part of the Salisbury Lynching Memorial Task Force, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about lynching in Wicomico County and our efforts here with the task force. So just a bit about us. Mr. Kitzrow did a really great job introducing us. I'm one of the co-chairs, and Amber Green, who's also on the call, is a co-chair, and James Yamakawa is our secretary. We also have about 20 task force members that were accepted by Mayor Day to join this project. And we've been also working with community members and accepting their input throughout this process. We have about 50 people who are on our mailing list that regularly receive our emails and interact with us. So I just wanted to start out by discussing a little bit about where we're coming from with this project. A lot of people hear lynching and they think, you know, why would you want to talk about such an awful part of our nation's history? And basically, I just want to briefly address that with a quote from Brian Stevenson, who's a founder of the Equal Justice Initiative. And he says that we can't heal from the deep wounds inflicted during the era of racial terror until we tell the truth. Basically stating that we can't form an equitable society without talking about the deep, dark parts of our history. So briefly, we believe that the past affects the present. And this is just a very general overview of our nation's history in regards to Black people and a racial hierarchy. Obviously, as we all know, Black people were formerly enslaved in this country for over 200 years. After the Civil War, there was another racial hierarchy created through Jim Crow laws and de facto segregation, and which were broadly enforced by domestic terror campaigns. Today, we live in an era of mass incarceration. Black people are incarcerated at higher rates than whites and are sentenced for longer periods of time in the state of Maryland. Black people are also at a higher risk for becoming victims of crime than white people. And those facts are from the Prison Policy Initiative. Just to give you a brief statistical overview, you can see that Maryland incarcerates people at a higher rate than many countries. And in the second graph, you can see that while white people make up 55% of the population in Maryland, they account for 27% of the jail population, the prison and jail population. While Black people only make up about 30% of our population, they make up about 70% of our jail population. And there's obviously no evidence that suggests that Black people commit crimes at a higher rate than white people, only that they're policed more heavily, arrested in higher rates, and sentenced in higher rates. So now I want to give just a brief description of what lynching is. Lynchings were not just extrajudicial punishments for crime. Lynchings were violent and public acts that tortured and traumatized Black people throughout the country. They were also largely tolerated by state and federal officials. These lynchings were terrorism. Terror lynchings actually peaked between 1880 and 1940 and claimed the lives of African American men, women, and children who were forced to fear, humiliation, and the barbarity of this widespread phenomenon. And that description is directly from the Equal Justice Initiative. And these are 6 features of lynchings that they have found throughout their research. And over half of the victims at EJI were lynched on a usually baseless claim of a violent crime against a white person. However, there were other quote unquote reasons given for lynchings. One of the most famous lynchings, the murder of Emmett Till, was supposedly a consequence for a casual social transgression where he was alleged to whistle at a white woman. These lynchings were used to control the Black population rather than punish crime. And you can also see that there are about 6 categories that these lynchings fall into. And one lynching could also have many different features. For example, someone could be resisting mistreatment and then their lynching was used to target the entire Black community. According to the Baltimore Sun, there are 46 known lynchings in the state of Maryland. Of those 46, there are 3 known lynchings in Wicomico County. It's very important that we add that modifier known in front of lynchings because many lynchings did go unreported in the media. Or when they were reported, they were sometimes reported as accidental deaths or just as simply as murders. Here are 3 known victims. The first was Garfield King. He was only 18 years old when he was killed. He was alleged to have murdered a white man, but he says that he committed this crime in self-defense. He was ripped from the Salisbury jail by a white mob and hung from a tree on May 21st, 1898. I don't want to be too graphic, but his body was filled with over 50 bullets. And often these victims were tortured both before and after death. Garfield King was a graduate of Princess Anne Academy, and he lived in what is now Allen, Maryland. Other than that, we don't know much about him, unfortunately. Matthew Williams was our second known lynching victim. He was only 23 years old when he was lynched in Salisbury in 1931. He was accused of murdering his white employer over a wage dispute, but was rumored to have been framed. He was taken from Peninsula General Hospital where he was recovering from bullet wounds, dragged through the city of Salisbury, stabbed repeatedly, and hung from the courthouse lawn in front of thousands before his body was burned in a lot and dragged through the city of Salisbury. As I said, thousands of people witnessed his death. His body was recovered by local police and the Black undertaker, James Stewart, who is actually honored on the Church Street mural. The third victim, we unfortunately do not know his identity, but he was found following the mob that killed Matthew Williams on the railroad tracks on the outskirts of Salisbury. He's suspected to have been the victim of the same mob, and not much is known about him or his death, but it's suspected that he was about 35 or 40 and that he could possibly have been out grocery shopping and was basically a victim of circumstance, meaning that the mob was riled up and patrolling for unsuspecting Black people, and he just happened to be alone. So after these lynchings, there was little to no accountability. The media refused to report on the lynchings, and witnesses refused to identify, my printer is like going off, I'm sorry, refused to identify mob leaders. So no one was ever convicted or charged for any of these deaths. The silence helped perpetuate a culture of fear and helped perpetuate the racial divide. There was undoubtedly a ton of fear after these lynchings occurred. Community members, both Black and white, were fearful. Some white children were actually forced to witness lynchings and undoubtedly experienced psychological trauma as an effect. Black community members were obviously extremely fearful in the wake of lynchings and often instructed their children to stop interacting with white people as much as possible, including their white friends. Violence was also common in the wake of lynchings. Black community members were threatened and property damage was threatened, and sometimes entire sections of communities were burned down, like in the instance of Black Wall Street. So obviously these lynchings had more of a pronounced effect than just a murder in a community. Both Black and white community members were affected by the fear, the silence, and the violence in the wakes of these killings. So moving forward back to the present, we have some stuff going on that we hope will help promote reconciliation in our community. The first is the soil collection. There have been some photos of a previous soil collection throughout the presentation and on the left-hand side of the screen. And basically the soil collections are public events in which we visit the sites of where the victims were lynched and collect the soil and use it as a reminder of what happened here in our community. They also facilitate conversation in our community and education about the racial terror era. We also have our historical marker ceremony coming, and we were recently approved by EJI to have their marker installed, and we are currently crafting the language along with them. The marker will memorialize the 3 known victims by describing their stories, and on the other side, EJI will craft language that actually discusses lynching in America in a more broad sense. EJI is also sponsoring a social justice essay contest for high school students. We're expecting that to occur in the spring semester. Winners will actually be able to get a cash prize for education. And even those who don't win will be entered into an anthology sponsored by Phoenix Youth Project called Enough is Enough. There are also public hearings going on in the next couple years, which was established by House Bill 307. The commission is authorized to research cases of racially motivated lynchings and hold public meetings and regional hearings where a white mob has been documented. They've started their organizing process and researching process and have been contacting local and state departments to gather information. And I just want to kind of end by circling back to the beginning sentiment with a quote from Martin Luther King saying that we're not makers of history, we are made by history. And the left-hand photo is a photo of LaTanya Christopher, who is a descendant of Garfield King, who was the first lynching victim that I spoke of. And we've been in contact with her, and she wants to know more about her ancestor who was killed at such a young age and has been frustrated that she's been unable to find information. She also wants people to know about the Black and white divide in this community, that racism is still alive, and what we can do to begin healing. The second photo is actually a photo of Heather Heyer, who was a woman killed in Charlottesville, Virginia a few years ago after the Unite the Right rally. She was protesting white supremacy, and I was actually a student at UVA at the time. And it's really awful to live in a community that has been rocked by these domestic terror incidents. And her incident just goes to show that it's not just Black people who are at risk for domestic terror and white supremacy. White people are too. And if you want to know more, this is a very broad and general explanation of lynching and our 3 victims. These are great books that discuss the topic in greater detail. Highly recommend them. And I also included our email address in case we don't have time for questions. You can hit us up at Salisbury Memorial Task Force at gmail.com. And we're happy to take any comments and any questions. So thank you so much. And if we have time for questions, we'll take them. If not, I'll just defer back to the chair. Thank you.
Michaela, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Amber, thank you for being here as well. And James, thank you. Do any of the council members have any questions?
I would just like to make a statement. I think fantastic work. This is much needed work. Michaela, you laid it out very nicely, and I'll be in contact with you. I'd like to have this presentation for our youth at Choices. Actually, it would be fantastic to have this information come there. But congratulations, and the detail of your presentation was very nice. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Michaela, I was going to ask, could you please send the email to either Andy or Julia, or you can send it to all city council members. I think we'd like to have it as a reference.
Sure. I'll also put it in the chat right now too.
Fantastic. We appreciate it. And thanks again for the presentation. Very, very informative.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Very welcome. Next on the agenda, we have a presentation for Municipal Government Works Month. And that, again, will come to Andy Kitzrow for the presentation.
President Heath, do we want to, I think we might have jumped over one real quick in the proclamations, National Runaway Prevention Month.
Oh, sorry. Yes, there are 2. We have two more.
Great.
Whichever
Well, yeah.
one you'd like to go first.
All right, I'll go with the National Runaway Prevention Month.
Okay.
Luckily, Amber Green is here again. I know this topic of conversation is near and dear to her and her Phoenix Youth Project. So I just want to give a shout out to her. I'm seeing her online. So I'm going to go ahead and read through this proclamation. Whereas National Runaway Prevention Month began in 2002 and is spearheaded each year by the National Runaway Safe Line, NRS, the federal designated national communication system for runaway and homeless youth. And whereas the prevalence of runaway and homelessness among youth is staggering, with studies suggesting that every year 4.2 million people ages 13 to 25 endure some form of homelessness. And whereas runaway youth are often expelled from their homes, have experienced abuse and trauma, are involved in the foster care system, and are too poor to secure their own basic needs, and may be ineligible or unable to access adequate medical or mental health resources. And whereas children and youth who run away are at an increased danger for falling into high-risk situations, including human trafficking. And whereas the effective programs supporting runaway youth and assisting youth and their families in providing safe and stable homes succeed because of partnerships created among families, youth-based advocacy organizations, community-based human service agencies, law enforcement, schools, faith-based organizations, and businesses. And whereas Phoenix Youth Project, Inc. in Salisbury, Maryland is such a program under the leadership of Executive Director Amber Green, which provides effective support for marginalized youth through a variety of programs and drop-in services, which are funded through the Wicomico Partnership for Families and Children, the local management board of Wicomico County, the Maryland's Governor's Office for Children. And whereas Phoenix Youth Project Drop-In Center is a resource for youth ages 13 to 24 who experience a housing crisis and homelessness, need basic resources, including food, personal needs, items, and laundry services, or may, my computer is messing up. Okay, sorry. Facing runaways and homelessness, I apologize. I lost my place. Let me start that one again because it's a really important piece. And whereas Phoenix Youth Project Drop-In Center is a resource for youth ages 13 to 14 who are experiencing a housing crisis or homeless and need basic resources, including food, personal needs, items, and laundry services, and may just need people to love and accept them as they are and place to belong. And whereas the Phoenix Youth Project program provides creative and safe spaces for marginalized youth to experience and access resources designed to help them build and gain leadership skills and to become actively engaged in social justice and community issues. And whereas the City of Salisbury joins the National Runaway Safe Line and Phoenix Youth Project Incorporated in recognizing November as National Runaway Prevention Month to raise awareness of the issues facing runaway and homeless youth and to educate the public about solutions and the role community members can play in ending youth homelessness. Now, therefore, I, Andy Kitzrow, Deputy City Administrator of the City of Salisbury, do hereby proclaim November 2020 as National Runaway Prevention Month.
Thank you, Andy. Amber, I have to tell you, you're one of the best jugglers I've ever met in my life. How you do as much as you do is amazing, and we are so lucky to have you with us. So thank you for that. Well earned. Your project does amazing things for our kids, and I thank you. I thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, now let's try now, Andy, the Municipal Government Works Month.
Yeah, that sounds good. All right. Whereas Maryland is home to 156 municipalities in addition to the City of Salisbury, which was incorporated in 1854. And whereas a municipal government represents the most responsive level of government, allowing citizens to have direct access to elected officials. And whereas Maryland's cities and towns have celebrated Municipal Government Works Month each November since 1993 in an effort to promote citizens' awareness of and interest in the government and their communities. And whereas those same cities and towns have educated over 27,000 students and their teachers about how municipal governments works through school visits in their respective communities. And whereas municipalities have enhance the quality of life for their respective residents by maintaining natural and historic sites and structures local to their cities and towns, making Maryland a great place to live, work, play, and explore. And whereas in an effort to educate citizens about municipal government and the importance of their participation, the City of Salisbury is proud to promote municipal government awareness. Now, therefore, I, Andy Kitzrow, Deputy City Administrator of the City of Salisbury, do hereby proclaim November 2020 as Municipal Government Works Month.
Thank you, Andy. As you know, we belong to the Maryland Municipal League, and there are many divisions. I forget how many. Mir, how many do we have in MML now?
157 members.
157 members who are all striving to be better at what we do. It's a very good organization, and certainly we take advantage of it, and most municipalities should. But thank you very much for the proclamation, and we'll move on for the agenda. Thank you. I'll call for a motion now and a second to adopt the legislative agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Blake made the motion. Mr. Boda seconded. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. If you're opposed, say nay. Mr. Boda.
Aye.
Ms. Blake.
Aye.
Mrs. Gregory.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. The vote is 4-0. Just to let everyone know, April Jackson had an emergency call during the meeting and had to leave. That's why she's not participating. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Mr. Boda, second.
Second.
Mrs. Gregory. Good evening, Mrs. Nichols.
Good evening, Mr. Heath. Good evening, everyone.
On the consent agenda tonight, we have the October 19th, 2020 work session minutes, October 19th closed session minutes, October 26th legislative session minutes, resolution number 3072 approving the reappointment of Brendan Frederick to the Historic District Commission for the term ending October 2023, resolution number 3073 approving the reappointment of Dr. Alexander Pope to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee for the term ending November 2023. And resolution number 3074 approving the appointment of Dominique Sessa to the Parks and Recreation Committee for the term ending November 2023. And that's it for the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mrs. Nichols. At this time, I'll call the vote to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Mr. Boda,
Aye.
Ms. Blake,
Aye.
Mrs. Gregory,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. The vote is 4-0. At this time, I'd like to thank, the only person I see that's on the call is Dominique. And Dominique, thank you very much for your service. And I believe you're also on the Disability Advisory Committee, which is good too. And we thank you for that. And I'd also like to thank Brendan Frederick and Dr. Alexander Pope for their volunteering. I'll entertain a motion to approve the award of bids.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Mrs. Gregory. Good evening, Mrs. Miller.
Good evening, Mr. Heath, members of the council. Just one item this evening. It's a request from the Department of Field Operations to declare a few items as surplus. It's 4 vehicles and about 33 other miscellaneous items. All of them have surpassed their service life. They're in poor condition or it would be too expensive to bring them back to an operable condition, and then it would exceed the value of the item itself. Whatever information we had about the items is on the spreadsheet. I think the font was probably a little bit small when it got over to your packet, but if you need any more specific information, we'll try to get that for you. Upon declaration of surplus by council, we will add these to an auction list. We will be putting out an RFP for on-site auction services. The council had approved numerous vehicles and other surplus items several months back. We'll combine the two. And then this is what will be presented to see if we can have an auctioneer come on site.
Great. Thank you, Mrs. Miller. Questions or comments? Mr. Boda?
No comments.
Ms. Blake?
None.
Mrs. Gregory?
None.
Hearing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor of the award of bids, please signify by saying aye. Mr. Boda?
Aye.
Ms. Blake?
Aye.
Mrs. Gregory?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. The vote is 4-0. Thank you, Mrs. Miller. I'll entertain a motion to approve resolution number 3075.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Boda? Ms. Blake? Mr. Kitzrow?
All right, resolution number 3075. To clarify, President Heath, you want me to read it as written and amended or read the strike throughs as well? I just want to make sure I'm clear on the resolution.
I wasn't aware that there are amendments. Is that
Not amendments. It's just I have the red line version. I just wanted to make sure I'm just reading the changes rather than what it was.
Just read. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, resolution number 3075, a resolution of the Council of the City of Salisbury, Maryland, to amend the bylaws of the Human Rights Advisory Committee to change the committee's membership requirements and terms. Whereas on August 10th, 2016, the mayor and council of the City of Salisbury adopted a resolution number 2653, creating the Human Rights Advisory Committee. And whereas the purpose of the committee is to advise the mayor on equity and inclusionary strategies that will strengthen connections among diverse communities living in the city, protect, safeguard the right and opportunity of all persons to be free from all forms of discriminations, to advocate for its citizens and all levels of government who have been victims of discrimination, and identify and work with the community partners to find opportunities to create a more inclusive, diverse community. And whereas membership of the Human Rights Advisory Committee would be enhanced by lifting the requirement to retain a high school student as a representative, and said change the clause to require a person aged 16 to 24 years be a member of the committee, thus allowing the committee to be more readily fill that position while still ensuring that youth voices are represented. And whereas the functionality of the Human Rights Advisory Committee would benefit from reducing term lengths from 4 to 2 years to ensure that a diverse range of community members are able to be represented on the committee. Now, therefore, it be resolved by the City Council of the City of Salisbury, Maryland, that the bylaws of the Human Rights Advisory Committee be amended to reflect the changes to Section 1.A, membership, as follows. Section 1, membership. The Human Rights Advisory Committee, the committee shall consist of 13 members. The members shall be authorized and appointed by the mayor and approved by the council. The membership shall include at least 2 representatives of racial or national minorities, and at least 2 representatives from the LGBTQ plus community, and at least 1 represented age 16 to 24 years, and at least 2 members of local religious organizations. Members shall serve terms of 2 years, and at which point the member may choose whether to apply for a subsequent term. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Kitzrow. Questions or comments, Mr. Boda?
No questions or comments, and I think this is, as we talked about in the work session, this is going to help expand that age group a little bit, as there's been some issues, I guess, with trying to keep a high school student for a full term. So I think this is a good thing.
Thank you. Ms. Blake?
No questions. It's just a good thing.
Thank you. Mrs. Gregory?
No questions, just I'm glad it's changing to be more inclusive.
Thank you. Now call the motion. All those in favor of resolution number 3075, please signify by saying aye. Mr. Boda?
Aye.
Ms. Blake?
Aye.
Mrs. Gregory?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Resolution number 3075 is passed by a vote of 4-0. I'll entertain a motion to approve resolution number 3065.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Blake made the motion, Mrs. Gregory seconded. Mr. Kitzrow?
Resolution number 3065, a resolution of the City of Salisbury proposing the annexation to the City of Salisbury, a certain area of land contiguous to and binding upon the corporate limit of the City of Salisbury to be known as Hall Drive-Long Property Annexation, being for the same at the point on the corporate limit, said point lying on the westerly side of the South Division Street, said point being across from the southwesterly corner of Lot 1, Block C of Wycomico Commons subdivision, and also being a corner of the existing corporate limits line of the City of Salisbury, Maryland, continuing around the perimeter of the affected property to the point of beginning, containing all the map 048 parcels 208 and 067 containing 1.26 acres more or less. I can read through all of this if that's what we'd like to do. Whereas the City of Salisbury has received a petition to annex dated December 20th, 2019, attached hereto Exhibit 1, signed by at least 25% of the persons who are resident registered voters and of the persons who are owners of at least 25% of the assessed valuation of the real property in the area sought to be annexed, binding upon the corporate limit of the City of Salisbury to be known as Hall Drive Long Property Annexation, being for the same at the point on the corporate limit, said point lying on the westerly side of South Division Street, said point being across from the southwesterly corner of Lot 1, Block C of Wycomico Commons subdivision and also being a corner of the existing corporate limits line of the city of Salisbury, Maryland, continuing around the perimeter of the affected property to the point of the beginning, containing all of map 048-parcels 208 and 067, containing 1.26 acres more or less, being more particularly described in Exhibit A, attached hereto and made part hereof. And whereas the city of Salisbury has caused to be made a certification of the signatures on said petition for annexation and has verified that the person signing the petition represent at least 25% of persons who are eligible voters and property owners owning 25% of the assessed valuation of real property in the area to be annexed, all as of March 13th, 2020, and will be more particular appear by the certification of, let's see, Cheryl, survey of the city of Salisbury attached hereto Exhibit 2. And whereas it appears that the petition dated December 20th, 2019 meets all the requirements of the law, and whereas the public hearing is scheduled for December 14th, December 20 at 6 p.m. Now therefore be resolved by the council of the city of Salisbury that it be hereby proposed and recommended that the boundaries of the city of Salisbury be changed so as to annex and include within said city all the parcel of land together with the persons residing therein and their property contiguous to and binding upon the corporate limit of the city of Salisbury to be known as the Hall Drive Long Property Annexation, beginning from the same at a point on the corporate limit, said point lying on the westerly side of South Division Street, said point being across from the southwesterly corner of Lot 1, Block C of Wycomico Common South Subdivision, and also being a corner of the existing corporate limits line of the city of Salisbury, continuing around the perimeter of the affected property to the point of the beginning, containing all map 048-parcels 208 and 067, containing 1.260 acres more or less, and being more particularly described on Exhibit A here, attached here to and made their part hereof. Be it further resolved by the city of Salisbury that the annexation of the said area be made subject to the terms, conditions, and agreements, Exhibits A through C, attached hereto and made part hereof. And be it further resolved by the city of Salisbury that the zoning map of the city of Salisbury shall be amended to include the newly annexed property in the R8A residential district. Said property is presently classified as R-15 residential under the zoning laws of Wycomico County. And be it further resolved that the city of Salisbury, that the council hold a public hearing on the annexation hereby proposed on December 14th, 2020 at 6 p.m. in the council chambers at the city council office building or online here on Zoom. And the city administrator shall cause a public notice of the time and place of said hearing to be published not fewer than 2 times at not less than weekly intervals in at least one newspaper of general circulation in the city of Salisbury, which said notice shall specify a time and place at which the council of the city of Salisbury will hold a public hearing on the resolution, which date shall be no sooner than 15 days after the final required date of publication specified above. And the final piece, and be it therefore resolved by the council of the city of Salisbury that this resolution shall take effect upon the expiration of 45 days following its final passage, subject, however, to the right of referendum as contained in the local government article of the Maryland Code. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Kitzrow. Questions or comments? Mr. Boda?
No questions or comments.
Ms. Blake?
No questions or comments.
Mrs. Gregory?
No questions or comments.
Hearing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor of resolution number 3065, please signify by saying aye. Mr. Boda?
Aye.
Ms. Blake?
Aye.
Mrs. Gregory?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Resolution number 3065 is passed by a vote of 4-0. And as a reminder, again, the public hearing will be held at 6 o'clock on December 14th. I'll entertain a motion to approve resolution number 3066.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Boda, Mrs. Gregory, Mr. Kitzrow.
Yep. So resolution number 3066 is the annexation plan for the resolution for 3065. So I won't read through the exact, all the detail of the property that is described, but I'll hit the highlights of the resolution. A resolution of the, go ahead.
Yep.
A resolution of the City of Salisbury to adopt an annexation plan for a certain area of land contiguous to and binding upon the corporate limit of the City of Salisbury to be known as the Hall Drive Long Property Annexation, beginning for the same at a point on the corporate limit, said point lying on the westerly side of the South Division Street, said point being across from the southwesterly corner of Lot 1, Block C of Wycomico County Common subdivision, and being a corner of the existing corporate limits line of the City of Salisbury, Maryland, continuing around the perimeter of the affected property to the point of beginning, containing all the map of 048-parcels 208 and 067, containing 1.260 acres more or less. The exhibits are the same in the attachment, and the public hearing is also on December 14th, 2020 at 6 p.m. for this resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Kitzrow. Any questions or comments, Mr. Boda?
No questions or comments.
Ms. Blake?
None.
Mrs. Gregory?
None.
Hearing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor of resolution number 3066, please signify by saying aye. Mr. Boda?
Aye.
Ms. Blake?
Aye.
Mrs. Gregory?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Resolution number 3066 is passed by a vote of 4-0. I'll entertain a motion to approve ordinance number 2626 for the second reading.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Blake made the motion, Mr. Boda seconded. Mr. Tillman, good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Heath. This is an ordinance of the City of Salisbury to authorize the mayor to enter into a contract with Wycomico County Health Department for the purpose of accepting grant funds in the amount of $24,951.28 and to approve a budget amendment to the FY 2021 grant fund to appropriate these funds for the purchase of 2 commercial-grade washer extractors and dryers. Whereas the Wycomico County Health Department received a direct allocation of funds through the Federal Coronavirus Relief Act, CRF, and whereas the purpose of the CRF is to help support emergency medical response expenses, including emergency medical transportation, and whereas the City of Salisbury Fire Department submitted a grant request for the Wycomico County Health Department for funding to assist with the purchase of a commercial-grade washer, extractor, and dryer for 2 of our fire stations. And whereas the Wycomico County Health Department has awarded the city funds in the amount of $24,951.28. And whereas the City of Salisbury must enter into a grant agreement with the Wycomico County Health Department defining how these funds must be expended. And whereas Section 7-29 of the Salisbury City Charter prohibits the city from entering into a contract that requires an expenditure not appropriated or authorized by the City Council. And whereas the appropriations necessary to execute the purpose of this grant must be made upon the recommendation of the mayor and approval of 4/5 of the council of the City of Salisbury. Now therefore be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Salisbury that Mayor Jacob R. Day is hereby authorized to enter into a grant agreement with the Wycomico County Health Department to accept grant funds in the amount of $24,951.28. And be it further ordained that the city's fiscal year 2021 grant fund budget be and is hereby amended as follows. Increase the Wycomico County Health Department revenue account by $24,951.28 and increase the Salisbury Fire Department equipment expense account by $24,951.28.
Thank you, Mr. Tillman. Any questions or comments, Mr. Boda?
No.
Ms. Blake?
None.
Mrs. Gregory?
None.
Hearing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor of ordinance number 2626 for the second reading, please signify by saying aye. Mr. Boda?
Aye.
Ms. Blake?
Aye.
Mrs. Gregory?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Ordinance number 2626 for the second reading is passed by a vote of 4-0. I'll entertain a motion to approve ordinance number 2627 for the second reading.
So moved.
Ms. Blake,
Second,
Mrs. Gregory. Mr. Tillman.
Thank you, Mr. Heath. This is an ordinance of the City of Salisbury authorizing the mayor to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Wycomico County Health Department and approving a budget amendment of the FY 2021 general fund budget to appropriate funds received from the Wycomico County Health Department in the amount of $7,500. Whereas the funds have been provided by the Wycomico County Health Department in conjunction with the Midshore Behavioral Health, Inc. for a Safe Station program. And whereas Safe Station is an innovative program that helps remove barriers to treatment for members of our community who are eager to recover from a substance use disorder. And whereas the goal of the Safe Station is to help people with linkage to treatment and recovery services by allowing them to practice self-determination. And whereas the City of Salisbury Fire Department will provide non-emergent medical checks to all individuals that enter into the Safe Station. And whereas the City of Salisbury must enter into a grant agreement with the Wycomico County Health Department defining how these funds must be expended, and whereas the accepted funds shall be used to purchase additional emergency medical supplies and equipment, and whereas both the fire chief and the mayor have recommended that the city accept the monetary donation and allocate the funds to the fire department's FY 2021 operating budget. And whereas Section 7-29 of the Salisbury City Charter forbids contracts requiring an expenditure not in excess of the amount appropriated for that general classification or expenditure, and forbids any office, department, or agency from expending funds not appropriated. And whereas appropriations necessary to execute the purpose of this grant must be made upon the recommendation of the mayor and approval of 4/5 of the council of the City of Salisbury, now therefore be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Salisbury that Mayor Jacob R. Day is hereby authorized to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Wycomico County Health Department to accept funds in the amount of $7,500, and be it further ordained that the city's fiscal year 2021 general fund budget be amended as follows. Increase the FY 2021 general fund Wycomico County Health Department reimbursements account by $7,500, and 2, increase the fire department expenditure medical account by $7,500.
Thank you, Mr. Tillman. Questions or comments? Mr. Boda?
No questions or comments.
Ms. Blake?
None.
Mrs. Gregory?
none.
Hearing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor of ordinance number 2627 for the second reading, please signify by saying aye. Mr. Boda?
Aye.
Ms. Blake?
Aye.
Mrs. Gregory?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Ordinance number 2627 for the second reading is passed by a vote of 4-0. I'll entertain a motion to approve ordinance number 2628 for the second reading.
So moved.
Second,
Mr. Boda? Mrs. Gregory? Mr. Tillman?
Thank you. This is an ordinance of the City of Salisbury approving a budget amendment of the grant fund to appropriate funds to operate the Salisbury Wycomico First Care Team known as SWIFT. Whereas the Wycomico County Health Department in conjunction with the City of Salisbury applied for funds through the Maryland Community Health Resources Commission, CHRC grant program. And whereas the CHRC awarded the Wycomico County Health Department in fiscal year 2018 in the amount of $90,000, and whereas the Wycomico County Health Department has previously subgranted $81,920 to the City of Salisbury, those funds being appropriated via Ordinance 2503 and Ordinance 2559. And whereas of the remaining $8,080 of FY 2018 funding that was received by the Wycomico County Health Department from the CHRC, the Wycomico County Health Department is now subgranting $4,600 to the City of Salisbury. And whereas these funds are to be added to existing SWIFT grant program account 21009, and whereas the subgranted fund shall be used to operate the Salisbury Wycomico County First Care Team known as SWIFT, and whereas the City of Salisbury must enter into a sub-grant agreement with the Wycomico County Health Department defining how these funds must be expended, and whereas Section 7-29 of the Salisbury City Charter prohibits the city from entering into a contract that requires an expenditure not appropriated or authorized by the City Council, and whereas appropriate appropriations necessary to execute the purpose of this grant must be made upon the recommendation of the mayor and approval of 4/5 of the council of the city of Salisbury. Now therefore be it ordained by the city council of the city of Salisbury that Mayor Jacob R. Day is authorized to enter into a sub-grant agreement with the Wycomico County Health Department to accept and expend grant funds in the amount of $4,600, and be it further ordained that the city's FY21 grant fund budget be and is hereby amended as follows. Increase the Wycomico County Health Department SWIFT grant revenue account by $4,600 and increase the SWIFT equipment expense account by $4,600.
Thank you, Mr. Tillman. Questions or comments? Mr. Boda?
No questions or comments.
Ms. Blake?
None.
Gregory?
None.
Hearing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor of ordinance number 2628 for the second reading, please signify by saying aye. Mr. Boda?
Aye.
Ms. Blake?
Aye.
Mrs. Gregory?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Ordinance number 2628 for the second reading is approved by a vote of 4-0. I'll entertain a motion to approve ordinance number 2629 for the first reading.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Blake, Mrs. Gregory, Mr. Tillman.
Thank you. This is an ordinance of the city of Salisbury to authorize the mayor to sign the grant agreements to accept 2 grants in the total sum of $155,565.60 from the Maryland Department of Transportation, Maryland Bikeways Program for the design of the Rail Trail Phase 1 and West College Avenue Bikeway projects, and to approve an amendment of the FY21 budget to allocate said funds for the purposes of implementation. Whereas the Maryland Department of Transportation has a Maryland Bikeways program for providing grant funds to support and expedite projects, improving bicycle and pedestrian transportation in the state. And whereas the Maryland Department of Transportation and the city of Salisbury have been working together to improve bicycle connectivity throughout the city of Salisbury. And whereas the city of Salisbury desires to implement a bike route along a railway that runs north-south through the city. And whereas the city of Salisbury desires to implement a bike route along West College Avenue, serving Salisbury University and the city at large. And whereas the projects will enhance bicycle safety and access to the population of the city. And whereas the Maryland Bikeways program has awarded grants in the total amount of $155,565.60 to provide for the design of the West College Avenue and Rail Trail Phase 1 Bikeway projects. And whereas the city shall accept the grant in the form of lost my place there, just like Andy. And whereas population, this is Phase 1 projects, and whereas the city shall accept the grant in the form of reimbursements and transfer of those funds from MDOT reimbursement account to the Bikeways Capital Projects account. And whereas Section 7-29 of the Salisbury City Charter prohibits the city from entering into a contract that requires an expenditure not appropriated or authorized by the city council. And whereas appropriations necessary to execute the purpose of these grants must be made upon the recommendation of the mayor and approved by 4/5 of the council of the city of Salisbury. Now therefore be it enacted and ordained by the city council of the city of Salisbury, does hereby authorize the mayor to sign the attached grant agreement, accepting the project term and definition of matching funds for the betterment of the city and its residents, and accepting the grant funds of $155,565.60 from the Maryland Bikeways program to design the West College Avenue and Rail Trail Phase 1 Bikeways project, and further authorizes grant reimbursements to be transferred to the appropriate Bikeways capital projects account. And be it further ordained that the city's fiscal year 2021 grant fund budget be amended under the Maryland Bikeways program Grant College Avenue. There will be a revenue increase of $29,608 and a construction expense increase of $29,608. And for the FY20 Maryland Bikeways program Grant Rail Trail, the Maryland Department of Transportation revenue account will be increased by $125,957.60, and the construction expense will be increased by $125 $125,957.60.
Thank you, Mr. Tillman. Questions or comments? Mr. Boda?
I think this is a great project, and it continues us on, making that north-south connection. So glad to be able to support this.
Thank you. Mrs. Blake?
It's a fantastic project, no questions.
Mrs. Gregory?
Just reiterate what everybody else said. It's a fantastic project. No question.
Thank you. I agree. This has been, it seems like we've been waiting a long time to get this phase going, and it's exciting to be able to see it come to fruition. So can't wait to see what they come up with. I'll now call the motion. All those in favor of ordinance number 2629 for the first reading, please signify by saying aye. Mr. Boda?
Aye.
Ms. Blake?
Aye.
Mrs. Gregory?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Ordinance number 2629 for the first reading is approved by a vote of 4-0. I'll entertain a motion to approve ordinance number 2630 for the first reading.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Boda, Mrs. Gregory, Mr. Tillman.
Thank you, Mr. Heath. This is an ordinance of the City of Salisbury approving a budget amendment of the FY21 general fund budget to appropriate insurance proceeds received in FY21 as part of the payment for vehicle repair. Whereas the City of Salisbury Zoo vehicle, 2004 GMC small dump truck, was involved in an accident on site and was repaired by a local vendor. And whereas the Department of Field Operations is requesting that the insurance proceeds of $848.15 be placed in the zoo vehicle account. And whereas the zoo will utilize the funds from the insurance proceeds to pay for the repair within the FY21 budget year. And whereas appropriations necessary to execute the purpose of these funds must be made upon the recommendation of the mayor and the approval of 4/5 of the council of the city of Salisbury. Now therefore be it resolved by the council of the city of Salisbury that city's fiscal year 2021 general fund budget is hereby amended as follows. Increase insurance proceeds by $848.15. Increase the Salisbury Zoo vehicle account by $848.15.
Thank you, Mr. Tillman. Questions or comments? Mr. Boda?
No questions or comments?
Ms. Blake?
No questions or comments.
Mrs. Gregory?
No questions or comments.
Hearing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor of ordinance number 2630 for the first reading, please signify by saying aye. Mr. Boda?
Aye.
Ms. Blake?
Aye.
Mrs. Gregory?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Ordinance number 2630 for the first reading is approved by a vote of 4-0. Thank you, Mr. Tillman.
Thank you.
Mr. Kittredge, do we have any requests for public comments relative to items on the agenda?
At this point, we do not have anything, and I'm not seeing any comments or messages to myself, so I think we are good to go.
Thank you. I'll call for council comments for the good of the order. Mr. Boda?
Yeah, it was a great event on Friday when we were doing the ribbon cutting, opening up Main Street. Looks great. A lot of great work done. And one of the greatest things we like to hear is that it was under budget and under schedule. So, or ahead of schedule. So that's great. And I appreciate Amanda and her team and George and Lynch and all the other people involved in that project. It's been a long 5 years since we approved it, and to see it complete is just a great feeling. It's a generational project for our city, and so glad to be a part of that. Other than that, hey, downtown's open, our restaurants are open, our businesses are open, so please continue to support our local businesses. And tip your waitresses really good. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boda. Ms. Blake?
Well, since April's not here, I know she would say this, just being very mindful and reminding people to wear their mask and continue to social distance. Our numbers nationwide and even in our region are ticking up a little bit. And with the holidays coming up and families gathering, it's a bit of a concern. So please continue to be diligent. And also, if you're healthy enough, please give blood, donate blood.
Mrs. Gregory.
Since I wasn't here last week to say it, this is National Epilepsy Month. So, if you can make a donation to the Epilepsy Foundation. And November 1st was Lennox-Gastaut Syndrome Day. It kicks off the month for Epilepsy Month. And other than that, I just want to reiterate what everybody said. Please, please, please wear your mask. We are not through this COVID yet. The numbers are going up. And I imagine, if we don't adhere to these, it will continue to go up. So please remember to wear your mask, use hand sanitizer, wash your hands.
Thank you, Mrs. Gregory. I too want to commend Amanda and her group. Looking down the street the other day, and like I said, I went down the other night with my wife and drove down in the evening and watched the things that were open, the restaurants with people in them. It surpassed my expectations, believe it or not. And I generally have high expectations. So thank you again for your leadership, and thank all your people, please. And again, please, as everyone said, wear masks. We're not out of this yet. And if you look what's happening in the Northwest right now, I heard that I think it was Utah had to bring in 10 freezer trucks. That's not good. And one of the simplest solutions is wear your mask. So please do that. God bless you all. Been a great night. Thanks, everyone. And enjoy the last day of good weather tomorrow, because after that, it's going to get wet. Good night, everyone. The meeting's adjourned.